Hello, everyone, and welcome to Execute, our podcast on industry academia dialogues. In today's episode, we'll be discussing about the implementation of the DPDPA 2023. And we have with us Ms. Vasantika Srinath, founding and managing partner of Arnava Legal. So, welcome to Vasantika, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much, Vinny. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. So, uh, discuss DPDPA. One cannot emphasize enough that the rules have finally come out after a very, very long wait. And now that the rules are out, organizations are gearing up towards DPDPA implementation. So, ma'am, if you could please tell us what are the key changes that come up with the introduction of the rules and the critical steps organizations must take.
The wait is finally over. It's important to note that, and it is basically the rules fill in procedural gaps. It's not touching upon core principles. Obviously, rules are subservient to the act and the law. They have tightened significantly how notice, consent, governance, and all will work in practice because they've gotten a little more detailed on some of these points. And the one very important thing to be noted is that we've now got a very clearly phased rollout where the act is effective from 13th of November, and they're supposed to start constituting the Data Protection Board of India within 12 months. That means by November 13th, 2026, we should see the setup or rather commissioning of consent managers, and 18-month outer window is for full compliance for all fiduciaries and processors, and even more importantly, the significant data fiduciaries with the law. So for them, the deadline is 13th of May 2027. So now people need to get cracking and ensure that they will be compliant. So notice and consent, was anyway supposed to be written in clear language, easy, but the rules are very specifically requiring that it has to be very purpose specific, very granular, and you have to disclose your retention limits, purpose, processing purpose, and simple verifiable consent flows. So that way the rules are making it much more clear and have become more detailed on what we need to do. So there are even requirements on governance, security, breach reporting, and so on. So a lot of data lifecycle recording, records and retention. So all of these. So basically companies and fiduciaries will need to go back to looking at what was their existing gap, if they have already done the gap analysis. And if not, they need to get started. But if they've already done a gap analysis, now they will have to still, factor in the added requirements that the rules state and see how they can, meet those requirements too.
Right, ma'am. And I believe the rules also come up with how the verifiable parental consent is to be taken. So, if you could clarify a bit more about that, because many parents, keep on asking these questions that are we supposed to keep on giving consent?
Yeah, so the verifiable parental consent, they have given three examples in the rules, which also make it very easy that if you look at the example, it becomes it's indicative. It's obviously but the expectation is that one, the website asks the child to declare that I am a child and so is my parent, and then you verify that so is actually the parent. Or a parent will come in and say that I am the parent for so child, and you will have to then verify it. So this will specifically apply to those organizations that are targeting or providing certain services. So it could be like teaching or coaching or even sports or any of those. So for children, so you have to be able to show that there is that proof, parent child guardian ward relationship, to be able to verify that. And they will have to do that, make that verification. So in all probability, having government IDs or linking it with DigiYatra, not DigiYatra, I'm sorry, I mean your digital locker, DigiLocker, not DigiYatra, DigiLocker, and things like that. So those will help the fiduciaries map and ensure that the consent is verifiable. Point is to verify that so and so is indeed the guardian or the parent.
Right, ma'am. One, I think, very good feature of our legislation is that we went for consent managers. And now with the rules, I believe it is a little clear who is going to act as consent managers. So while that is there, I mean, people still tend to ask, what kind of qualifications or what requirements should be there for an organization to actually provide this service to the people. So if you could, please clarify that who can act as a consent manager.
Yeah, so these are actually third parties. They have still not announced that, and I have not personally seen any notification asking people to apply to get appointed or to be approved to act as consent manager. But long back, they had already released the business requirement document, BRD, for consent management. So we hear that they have spoken to some 6 or 7 companies that are in the business of providing consent manager software. So the expectation is that at least 6 or 7 people will get notified by next year end, but they will have to obviously meet those specific requirements. You have to have a 2 crore net worth. Then you cannot have any conflict with an existing business, which is a fiduciary. And, there are those requirements. So they will put out, and I'm sure they will put out an application. So anybody who would like to apply, who has the capability and ability to meet those requirements and run a consent management service, will be able to apply. But we're still waiting for that. But these are basically third party and neutral consent manager. So if you are a fiduciary and there is a principal who wants to say manage their consent with you, the consent manager is an intermediary. They will basically be persons who take instructions from the principal and follow it up with the fiduciary or the significant fiduciary to ensure that the principal's instructions are given effect to. So it could be by way of APIs, that will interact, or I don't know, it will in all probability have to be APIs, but they may also have people who will send emails and follow up with calls and, have secondary means of contacting to be able to to be able to ensure that they are able to give effect to those requirements and requests.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, ma'am. Also, like in context of notice and consent, we see that the DPDP grants us certain rights as individuals, primarily when we've given our consent for the data in question. So how do we see the rights like access or correction or even deletion being implemented now that the rules are out?
They've not really made too many changes per se. So the rights remain the rights. So a person who still has the right of access continues to have the right of access, whether it is, the rules have not changed that. The rules are only more granular, have brought in granularity in terms of the notice per se. how the notice has to be given, and that a notice has to be separated from the privacy notice, has to be separated from the policy and things like that. So it becomes easier for a principal to see and understand their rights. And interestingly, even it's similar to GDPR, where your notice will also tell them that these are your rights, and if you're dissatisfied, this is where you can complain. So there will be a grievance officer or a DP and a DPO if required. And you will also give information of the Data Protection Board of India, so they can go and complain if they are still dissatisfied over there. So that being the case, your people will, if they read, that is, now problem is most people don't read the fine print, but if they read it, they will know that they have the right to go back and ask, what is it that you have? What is the information that you're holding on me? And things like that. So that will make a big difference to how the law is being implemented.
Right, ma'am. But to add, I would also like to ask you, because this is something that I've always wondered about, like who exactly, should be a grievance officer in an organization, and who should be a DPO, and who should they report to? Like, we are exactly not sure at present what qualifications these people should have, and these are questions that organizations do tend to ask us.
Yeah, these are pressing questions, yes, for organizations, but the act or rules do not answer any of these. They're pretty much silent on these points. But if we take a parallel and look at GDPR, and you look at general principles of law, it is always good that a data protection officer, one, should not be the same as a grievance officer. Grievance officer can be a first line of complaint that you have some escalation, etc. You go to the grievance officer. The data protection officer should be a person who understands privacy, who understands who understands the rights of the data subjects, and is able to uphold those rights. So they have to be able to, though they are employed by the company or the fiduciary, the organization, they have to be able to put themselves into the shoes of the data subject and ensure that what is being done is fair, is not going to cause any harm to the data subject, the principal. And it necessarily should be a person who has enough understanding and is able to advise the management and be heard. So it has to be somebody who's reasonably senior. It cannot be someone who's very junior and is still learning the law or learning practices and their way around. The act or rules do not say that the DPO, it says the DPO should be in India, but it does not say that the DPO cannot needs to be a full-time employee or employed by senior person. So it could also potentially be a consultant or a virtual DPO, but it has to be someone who's reasonably senior, who can help, who understands the law and can guide the management to ensure that there is no violation of the data principal rights or any violation by the company or the fiduciary itself in any way.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for clarifying that. And with this, we come to an end of today's conversation. This is one of the first in the series of conversations that we are going to have on implementing DPDPA. And I look forward to discussing this further with you on our subsequent podcasts. So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today.
Thank you, Vinny.